Hello, my name is Kristina Salzmann, and I am in Professor Perkins' Social Work 506 class, Human Behaviors in the Social Environment with Individuals, Families, and Groups. For the purpose of this presentation, I wanted to focus on infancy and toddlerhood, mainly around the idea of parent-child attachment. So first, I wanted to define attachment. It is known to be one of the most important issues surrounding infant development, and I am focused on this first relationship that the child builds, typically with a mother, because it is this bond that becomes the child's working model for all subsequent relationships. Ultimately, as children, we seek to be close to parents, therefore develop attachment styles based on the parenting type that we experience. While there are many theories surrounding the idea of parent-child attachment, the first one that I wanted to talk about was posed by Bowlby. He originally was studying animals when he noticed that we as humans have similar instincts and tendencies, and this is when he made the claim that attachment is natural, because when we are born, we have this innate need to be protected. Therefore, we tend to cling to the mother as sort of a survival technique. It is the exchange of stimuli between the child and mother that creates this bond of attachment, stimuli being anything that connects the two, like laughing and smiling. This bond is generally initiated by the child, but it is the mother that actually strengthens it. As I continue to look at Bowlby's theories, he hypothesized that attachment went through 4 stages as seen in the picture. First stage being pre-attachment, where the infant begins to connect with the mother and recognize her for her. There is no real attachment yet to anyone, therefore there is no fear of strangers and do not mind being left alone in others' care. This only lasts for the first 6 weeks, and then we move on to the next attachment style, which is attachment in the making. This is where infants start to respond differently around strangers than in the presence of their common caregivers. They develop a sense of trust and they expect the mother to respond when crying. This lasts from about the 6 weeks to 6 to 8 months, and then we enter clear-cut attachment stage. This is where you see signs of separation anxiety when the primary caregiver leaves. Mothers should be sensitive and supportive to hopefully reduce this distress, as this stage lasts from about 6 to 8 months to 18 to 24 months. And from that point on, we are in goal-corrected partnership. This is where the child's starting to understand and notice patterns in their caregiver leaving and, most importantly, returning. They start to depend less on the parents and become more independent and less distressed when the separation occurs. The next theories I want to talk about are Ainsworth and her colleagues, who identified 3 styles of attachment, along with Medigan and colleagues who, in more recent years, added on a 4th style. So we have securely attached infants, and this is where parents are sensitive and accepting. When being left by the caregiver, the infant becomes distressed at first, but very eager and warm upon their return. When securely attached, the child is not constantly worrying about their security, therefore they are able to focus on non-attachment related activities, which is exactly what we want. Then we have anxiously ambivalently attached, and this is where parents are inconsistent and unpredictable. The infant is distraught when being left and continues to be distressed upon their return and even when wanting to be held and comforted. Ultimately, these children are in constant fear of being abandoned, therefore make an effort to stay attached with the caregiver and become hypervigilant for signs of rejection. Next, we have avoidantly attached, and this is where the child is rejected by the parents. The infant is undisturbed when the parents leave, as well as upon the return. The infants want to remain close to the parents and suppress their feelings of distress in hopes that there won't be further rejection. Eventually, this results in the child giving up on trying to be close and attached to those caregivers. And finally, we have disorganized attachment, where the parent is seen as frightening. The child is inconsistent in their behaviors, both seeking and avoiding attachment all at the same time. And this occurs because when the child is afraid or in need, they are left to seek that from the scary parent. The kids' anxiety and distress are not lessened, but ultimately one source of stress is eventually traded for another. So next I want to talk about the big issue, which is attachment, or really lack thereof, has been proven to have a direct effect on child brain development. As you can see from the photo, there are two brains, the one on the left being a healthy brain, and then the right showing signs of neglect and abandonment. When looking at that second brain without experiencing attachment, the orbital cortex does not develop well. And this is the part of the brain that is responsible for social relationships, behavioral regulation, integrating both emotional and intellectual information. There is often debate about whether or not this impairment is permanent, but it is proven that overall, if this attachment is not developed within these first few years, the child will surely be impaired. This issue, in my opinion, is that we are not taking this seriously. Children are separated both voluntarily and involuntarily all the time from their parents, and it seems to be little concern to the world. I believe as social workers, we need to take a look at this and make adjustments accordingly. These children really rely on their environment to grow and flourish, especially within the micro and meso systems for these first few years. And when this environment is not nurturing nor accepting, the results are apparent and can be lifelong. Well, continuing to look from an ecological perspective, there are many systems that impact the parents, therefore impact the infant as well. I want to look at one voluntary reason that this parent-child separation occurs, and this is when parents decide to give up the child. When this occurs, the infant tends to go to an adoption agency where it is known that they will not be getting that immediate attention nor security that is required, ultimately resulting in lifelong attachment issues for these adopted infants. Next, moving on to involuntary reasons, and the first one that comes to mind is incarceration. There's no real conversation about the impact of taking a parent away from a child or the alternatives that could be done instead. For non-violent crimes, I personally think things like probation should be considered, if for no other reason, because of the lifelong impacts that come with removing a parent from the child's life. Next, moving on to socioeconomic status. If both parents are struggling to make ends meet, they most likely will not have the ability to take time off to give a lot of attention to that infant. Not to mention when incomes are cut in half by divorce, it is known to have an extreme impact on the child. There are many reasons for this, not necessarily only because of income, but when parents are separated, sometimes there's a lot going on and the child gets lost in the mix, resulting in a higher chance of neglect. Next, I want to think about the horrible idea of human trafficking, which is a massive issue here in North Carolina. When children are stolen from their parents at an early age, or if they're born under the control of a trafficking ring, there's a major possibility that they are not getting the attachment that they require. Another one that comes to mind is a death in the family. Whether it is from sickness or harm like fighting or war, when a parent dies, times become tough. With this, there's potential that the child will not receive the attention that they deserve, therefore experience some forms of separation and suffering. Although there are many reasons that parent-child separation may occur, these are some of the biggest that I see. Overall, when it comes to this issue, there's no direct correlation regarding certain races or cultures. In some circumstances, correlations can be made looking at certain races with higher rates of incarcerations or situations like what is happening at our border with immigration, but overall, it has nothing to do with race or culture and just the separation from parents. Many forms of parent-child attachment happen on a daily basis. There are a lot of issues that come along with this, especially when talking about parent-child separation. However, there is a specific one that I want to talk about, which I mentioned slightly in the last slide, and that is what is happening at our border, because this is what I consider to be a huge current issue regarding this parent-child separation. In my opinion, it is a crisis where we are literally, as a country, setting up future generations to suffer. I'm not saying or talking about whether or not it is right for people to try and sneak into our country, but the lifelong impacts of separating these children from their parents needs to be addressed. These children, when separated, are confused, scared, distressed, and all of this will result in lifelong struggles, like I talked about earlier, talking about emotional issues and future attachment styles. Ultimately, we need to be striving to make all children securely attached, and we run into major issues when our country is mandating people to do the opposite. There are many potential ethical dilemmas that could arise as a social worker regarding parent-child attachment, but the one that I want to focus on is regarding this immigration issue. As social workers, we have a commitment to clients, which is listed in our ethical standard 1.01 in the National Association of Social Workers Code of Ethics. We must promote clients' well-being, and their interests should always be primary. It is mentioned that there is an exception to this rule, that legal obligations may supersede the loyalty owed to clients, but this refers to cases of harming oneself or others. So while we are supposed to have this commitment to clients and their best interests in mind, we also have a commitment to our employers. This is code 3.09 within that same code of ethics, and I believe this is where a major ethical dilemma arises. This code mentions that social workers should adhere to commitments made to employers and employing organizations. They should also work to improve employing agencies' policies and procedures and the efficiency and effectiveness of their services. In regards to our current border control, employees are following the rules put in place by the Trump administration, even though they are not in any way promoting the client's well-being. Another code that goes against this commitment to employers is 6.01 for social welfare. It states that we should promote the general welfare of society and development of people, their communities, and environments. Promoting the well-being of these immigrants would be letting the parents and children stay together. However, this goes against the current rules for border control, therefore an extreme dilemma that we are seeing currently. All of this information is going to tremendously help me in my career as a social worker, especially since I would love to eventually work with kids. Regardless, understanding this need for secure attachment is crucial when helping both children and adults. Not only can it explain why they have certain tendencies and qualities, but also we can attempt to educate our clients that have kids, and while helping comfort the kids that do not have somebody to securely attach to. I really believe this development stage, being so crucial to one's development, should be more widely known. Yes, I had heard about separation anxiety, but never knew much about it. As someone that has the ability to have children, I am glad that I knew about this before doing so, but I feel like that is not the case for most people. Overall, I will use this knowledge a lot in life. Since there's so much negativity that comes into play when talking about attachment, or really lack thereof, I want to make sure in practice that I use a strengths-based perspective. I feel that it is so necessary, especially when working with clients. You want to be encouraging and speak in a positive way to promote their self-determination. This again goes for both parents and children. With parents, you want them to feel empowered and able to be that secure parent for the kid. So you do not want to talk about what could go wrong or how crucial this time is. Also, with children, they say they have grown up with other attachment styles. You do not want to tell them and be negative about it. You want to positively encourage and work for that sense of security that they should have.